Good afternoon, children. So we were doing the biogeochemical cycles, and in biogeochemical cycles, I have taught you carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle. All these cycles have been taught. Now what I am left with is the nitrogen cycle. So let's start with the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle. So in nitrogen cycle, you know, nitrogen is a very important nutrient and it is present in atmosphere. And in the atmosphere, this nitrogen, which is a very important nutrient, is present in the molecular form. So we get nitrogen in the atmosphere in the molecular form. And this nitrogen, which is in the molecular form in the atmosphere, cannot be utilized by the living organism. So it has to be in the usable form. So the usable form of nitrogen is in the form of nitrites, nitrates, and ammonium ion. Nitrites, nitrates, and ammonium ion. Or we can also write it like this: NO2, NO3, NO2, NO3, and NH4. So we have this either in the nitrites form or in the nitrates form or in the ammonium form. Nitrogen, the atmospheric nitrogen, which is in the molecular form, has to be converted into these usable forms. Then only the living organisms are able to utilize it. Otherwise, molecular forms, the organisms are not able to utilize it. Now, this atmospheric nitrogen is fixed by few processes, and the three ways by which the atmospheric nitrogen is fixed are, there are three ways. The first way of this is atmospheric fixation. Atmospheric fixation. The second is industrial fixation. The second one is industrial fixation, and the third way is biological fixation. The third type is biological fixation. So there are three ways: the atmospheric fixation, the industrial fixation, and the biological fixation. Now, I'm going to explain what are these three types of fixation. You know, in the atmosphere, the molecular nitrogen is fixed when there is lightning. In the presence of UV rays and in the lightning, the nitrogen is fixed by the process of oxidation. So now I'm going to explain the process of industrial fixation. So out of the three ways, let's start with the first way, which is atmospheric fixation, of fixing the nitrogen. So here what happens in the nature, the molecular nitrogen, it combines with oxygen And what is required there is lightning. And in the presence of UV radiations, this is converted into NO. This is converted into NO. This NO which is formed, it undergoes further oxidation. This undergoes further oxidation, and because of this further oxidation, I'll write here further oxidation. And because of this further oxidation, it gets converted into nitrites and nitrates. It gets converted into nitrites and nitrates. Now, these nitrites and nitrates which are formed, they combine with oxygen. The nitrites and nitrates which are formed, they combine with water, and when they combine with water, they form two acids, and those two acids which are formed are HNO2 and HNO3. Nitrous acid and nitric acid are formed. These acids which are formed, they pour down in the form of acid rain. So I think the lower portion is not visible to you. So I'll write at the top again. So these HNO2 or HNO3 which is formed, they come down in the form of acid rain. So they enter they come down into the soil. Where? Into the soil in the form of acid rain. And when they fall, they enter the soil in the form of acid rain, then they are this HNO3 and HNO2 are utilized by the plants. That means the nitrogen part is utilized by the plants. So this is atmospheric fixation of nitrogen. So this is how the nitrogen is fixed in the atmosphere. Now we come to another type of fixation of nitrogen, and that second type of fixation of nitrogen is industrial fixation. So this was the first type. Now we come to the second type, industrial fixation. Children, please pay attention. So the second type of fixation is industrial fixation. In industrial fixation, what happens? This is something which is done artificially. So this N2, the molecular oxygen, nitrogen, it combines with hydrogen. And when it combines with hydrogen in the industry, it gets converted into NH3. This gets converted into NH3, which is ammonia. This is ammonia. It gets converted into ammonia. Now this ammonia combines with CO2. That means this NH3, this combines with CO2 and forms urea. What is formed is urea. As a result of combination of ammonia with carbon dioxide, urea is formed. This urea, it is used as, let me allow 2 students to enter. So this urea, which is formed, this is used as fertilizers. This is used as fertilizers for the growth of plants. This is used as fertilizers for the growth of plants. Now, what happens when it is used up by the fertilizer? This dissociates and releases ammonium ion. That means NH4. NH4 is released, and this NH4 is a usable form of nitrogen, which can be used up by the living organism. So the first form, this was here, the nitrates and nitrites here, nitrates and nitrites. This also can be used by the plants, Okay, so this also can be used by the plants, nitrates and nitrites. And the usable form, just a minute, better. Let me fix little. So this is what the second type of industrial fixation. So another usable form of nitrogen we have got, which is in the form of ammonium ion. And this ammonium ion can be used up by the living organism. Before that, in atmospheric fixation, in the presence of lightning, we got nitrites and nitrates, which are again the usable form of nitrogen and can be used by the plants. Now, we come to the third type of nitrogen fixation, and that is biological fixation. So I think these two types is clear to you. Yes, beta, these two types is clear to you. Fixation of nitrogen. Yes, bacha. Both types are clear to you. Okay, fine, Paras. Atmospheric and industrial fixation. To everybody, is it clear, beta? Okay, Suksahaj. So here we come to the third type, and let me tell you, the third type of fixation, which is biological fixation, we have already done in 11th class. If you remember, there was a chapter mineral nutrition in which we did how the nitrogen gets in the leguminous plants, how the enzyme nitrogenase it acts, and how the nitrogen gets reduced and forms NH3, and then protonation of NH3 forms NH4, how that is formed, if you remember. So we come to the biological fixation of nitrogen. This is the third way, biological fixation of nitrogen. In the biological fixation of nitrogen, this is done by symbiotic bacteria, the symbiotic association. And this symbiotic association is seen in the leguminous plants. So this is seen in the leguminous plants. The leguminous plants, the plants which have root nodules, they accommodate in the root nodules a special type of bacteria. Those bacteria are rhizobium. That means if these are the roots of, these are the root nodules, in these root nodules the rhizobium is present. Okay, so these leguminous plants and the rhizobium bacteria, they they give them accommodation. That means the green plants, they give them accommodation, place to live, and in turn this rhizobium fixes nitrogen and makes the soil fertile for the leguminous plants. Now these rhizobium, they have an enzyme, I think you all remember, which we have done in 11th class, enzyme nitrogenase, if you remember. Nitrogenase in mineral nutrition chapter, we have done this enzyme nitrogenase. I think you all remember the enzyme nitrogenase, am I right? You all remember this enzyme nitrogenase we have done in 11th class in the chapter mineral nutrition. Do you remember, children? Do you remember, beta? Okay. Yes, Paras. Uh, yes, nitrogenase enzyme. And you know, this is a very important property of nitrogenase enzyme, that it functions in anaerobic conditions. We remember this also, that it acts in anaerobic conditions. That means there shouldn't be any oxygen. When these bacteria are there shouldn't be any oxygen. It acts in the absence of oxygen. So how that absence of oxygen is managed? How that absence of oxygen is managed? How, where does that oxygen go, or how that absence of oxygen is managed in the leguminous plants? You remember something? Yes, leg hemoglobin. That's right, Paras. That's right. So there is an oxygen scavenger. Oxygen scavenger, if you remember, this oxygen scavenger is leg hemoglobin. Leg hemoglobin. This leg hemoglobin is pink colored. If you remember, this is pink colored, and this leg hemoglobin, it eats up all the oxygen and creates an anaerobic condition so that the nitrogenase enzyme functions. It creates a condition, an anaerobic condition, so that the nitrogenase enzyme can function. And in the book there was a diagram in 11th class book, and I gave you that diagram to practice, and that diagram showed nitrogenous enzyme and how the reduction of nitrogenase enzyme takes place. So the diagram, it was somewhat like this. If you remember, we made the nitrogenase enzyme like this. The nitrogenase was made like this. It has, for molecular oxygen, so it accommodates nitrogen and the nitrogen, they are bonded by a triple bond. So this is nitrogen, this is nitrogenase enzyme, and this is nitrogen, molecular nitrogen, which is N2, which is bonded by a triple bond. Now what happens that at each step the reduction takes place, and as a result of reduction, what is going to happen? I'm making it like this, so it is easier to make like this. So what happens? When it undergoes reduction, one bond is broken, only two are left now, and hydrogen is seen here. One hydrogen, and then in the next step, again reduction. And as a result of this reduction, again, this is nitrogenase. Okay, so what we are going to have, this is nitrogen, and again the reduction has taken place. So only one bond is left, and we have one hydrogen, two hydrogens with this, one hydrogen, two hydrogens with this. This is all H, and further reduction of this nitrogenase, further reduction, and what do we get? Further reduction. Okay, beta, let me ask you before, I think the time will be over otherwise. Let me ask you one thing. After this chapter, because most probably today this chapter will be over, or tomorrow it will take only 5 minutes to complete this chapter. So may I know which chapter you want to start now? Just answer my question quickly first. Which chapter you want me to start now? Yes, after this. Little is left of this chapter, beta. Yes, bache, which chapter now? Yes, beta. I'm not getting any response. Yes, beta. Which chapter you want me to start now? Sukh Sahaj, human health and diseases, evolution. Okay, let me start evolution this time. So after that, Paras, because last this chapter was I think choice of some students, and this is choice of some other students. So reduction, more reduction takes place. When more reduction takes place, of course, what is going to happen if this is nitrogenase? So we have this nitrogenase enzyme. All the bonds are broken, no more connections, and we get 3H connected to it. Here, H, 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 H. And finally, they separate. The enzyme and the product separate. So what do we get? We get one. This is one nitrogen. This is nitrogen, nitrogen with 3H here. 1, 2, and 3 here. And another nitrogen again with 3H. 1, 2, and 3 here. H, 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 H. So we get ammonia, and this is the enzyme separated. And what do we get? We get ammonia. This ammonia is formed. This ammonia then undergoes protonation. Protonation, that means addition of proton, and as a result, what do we get? We get NH4 ammonium ion, which is the usable form. So after the protonation of ammonia, we get, that means one more proton is added, addition of protons, and finally we get NH4, which is the usable form of nitrogen. So this is biological fixation, which takes place in the leguminous plant. Is it clear, beta? This biological fixation is clear to you all? Beta, is it clear? Hurry up, bache, I want your response. Okay. Okay. Fine. So, bache, the last topic of this, after this nitrogen cycle, there is something which just needs a reading. It is ecosystem services. Ecosystem services means which we are getting the product of what we are getting from the ecosystem. You know, we think that it is for free. We are getting air, we are getting oxygen, we are getting water, we are getting various nutrients, we are getting fertile soil, we are various processes which are taking place around us. We think this is all free, but if we try to cost it, how much cost? See, the oxygen which we inhale every day, the water which we drink, the soil on which our crops are grown, we think that all these things are for free. But if we want to cost them, if we want to find out how much do they cost, what will be their cost, but we take them for granted. And what we are doing, we are polluting our environment. Okay, we think that the oxygen we are getting, that for free, the air the water which we are getting, that is also for free. What is there? The nature is giving us. Because the nature is giving us, we think that these things are free, and we just take those things for granted, and we keep on polluting them, deteriorating them. If we cost them, just see what will be their cost. This is what the ecosystem services, the last topic, which is just a paragraph topic, tells you. Now here they have written, the products of ecosystem processes are named as ecosystem services. So for example, healthy forest ecosystem purify air and water. If the ecosystem, if we have a healthy forest ecosystem, that means there will be proper rain, there will be proper temperature, and because of that we will get purified air and water. Mitigate droughts and floods. Okay, create fertile soils, provide wildlife habitat. If we have a healthy ecosystem, forest ecosystem will be taken care of. The floods, the drought, the fertile soil, the wildlife habitat, they will get, the wild animals, they will get a good habitat. So provide wildlife habitat, maintain biodiversity, pollinate crops. the pollination of crops will also take place, because if we have a healthy forest ecosystem, we will have a number of insects, number of butterflies, number of birds which will pollinate our crops. We think that what the bees are doing, that is nothing. They are sitting on one flower and then they are sitting on another flower. What they are doing? Nothing. Just imagine if all the bees die and if all the butterflies die, what's going to happen? No pollination. So we will get crops, or we will not get even the food to eat. This is such an important process what the butterflies, the bees are doing for us. So provide storage site for carbon and also provide aesthetic, cultural, and spiritual values. There was a researcher, and the name of researcher was Robert Constanza. The name of the researchers I'm writing here, Robert Constanza. This researcher, Robert Constanza, he tried to value, he tried to find out the cost of this ecosystem services. Robert Constanza and his colleagues have very recently tried to put price tags on nature's life support system. All these are nature's life support system. If the nature is providing us water, a purified air, that means they are providing us life support systems. So he tried to put price tags on that. So researchers have put an average price tag of US dollars 33 trillion a year on these fundamental ecosystem services. See, how much does it cost? It is US dollars, US dollars 33 trillion per year.